All right, so this video might be a little more distracting because I can't get my son to be quiet because he's a child and he wants to be around me instead of going to play cars in the living room. So ignore that. Now I'm gonna get people in the comments. Oh my gosh, she told her son to ignore her. Oh no, how dare she? All right, so I decided to answer some questions from my testimony video. Some people had some questions on my Instagram as well, so I'm going to try to get to everything. If I don't get to your question, my apologies, there's a lot of them. But first, I'm going to address all of the people who are upset about my diet soda drinking. Okay, listen, like I've said all over my Instagram story, I used to do cocaine, okay? I'm not worried about a little bit of aspartame. I'm not telling you that you should drink it, but I'm going to drink it occasionally. I had to pick the little buddy up because he was upset. Anyways, I'm going to be drinking some diet soda sometimes. All right, so the first question that I got was to explain how I became a Christian after being an atheist. I kind of went over it in the video, but people wanted more in-depth reasoning there. There were a lot of things that happened while I was kind of changing my politics. Part of it was becoming pro-life and realizing that, you know, it was a human being in the womb, trying to figure out why I thought that human beings had value in the first place, racking my brain for it. Eventually, through that questioning myself, I kind of came to the conclusion that if we're all just atoms, you know, bumping into one another, I don't know if we can really have any inherent value. So I started to look to God for that. And I realized, like, yeah, if God created us in his image, then that must be the reason why humans are valuable. So that was one big push. Another thing, like I said, was just being pregnant with my son. Like, just the emotional experience that was definitely led me back to God. There was also a time, actually before I got pregnant, where I was really suicidal on the bathroom floor. I was just crying out to God because I was feeling so bad for so long, and that was the one thing that I hadn't done in so long, was try to go to God with everything. I think that's how it is for a lot of atheists turned Christian, is they have personal experiences, usually crying out to God or something in their distress. I had been just so miserable for so many years, trying to fill that hole with alcohol, with drugs, with sex, with all of these other things. And I was still constantly self-harming, suicidal, depressed, anxious. So during a particularly bad night, I just called out to God. I was screaming basically in my own house alone in the bathroom. And I did it many times. I started praying, just doing anything, you know, trying to go back to the Christianity I was raised in and seeing if it actually could have any validity. And I remember feeling an overwhelming sense of peace after a little bit, and physically like feeling warmth, like almost like a big hug around me. And yes, people say that that's crazy. You can think it's crazy. That did happen to me. And that was something that it was still a few months before I became a Christian, but that was definitely something that started making me think. I was still in my very leftist atheist phase. I was towards the tail end of it, but I was still there. So I kind of ignored it for a while. I pushed it back. I was like, oh, that was nothing. You know, you're just imagining it, whatever. Now I can clearly see that that was God comforting me and showing me that he was always there through everything that I was going through. But a lot of it too was just like how I switched from my leftist views to my conservative views through facts, through logic trees, through arguing and debating with my parents. A lot of it was just kind of like logical deduction. I was like, you know, I went through all of the, you know, the cosmological argument for God, the teleological argument. I forget all of the names of them, but I started watching Christian YouTubers and just seeing their arguments, their philosophical arguments and justifications for believing in God. And that kind of like helped the logic part of my brain be like, this actually does kind of make a lot of sense. So, I mean, eventually like all of these experiences and arguments and, you know, watching debates and everything, I was just like, man, I can't, like I said before with the leftist stuff, I can't keep pretending that atheism is true. I can't do it. And like I said in the past video too, I had experiences with demonic presence, and that freaks a lot of Christians out when I say that. I literally, like, I know that it's true. Now, I'm not saying like, you know, like horror movie demonic stuff. I'm not saying like, oh, I was possessed. But I know that you can, as a Christian, be demonically influenced. I know the demonic realm is real. The spiritual realm is real. And I did have a lot of experiences with that kind of stuff. So that was something, like I said in my past video too, that if the bad part of the spiritual realm was good, the good part probably would also be true. And then the second part of this question was, you mentioned that you and your husband decided to live a traditional life where you're a stay-at-home mom and he goes to work. But I just want to know what influenced that decision. Could you take me through the process of how you reached a point where you started living as a conservative Christian couple? Because you also said that he was an atheist too. So my husband took a little bit longer to switch over. Not very much longer because, like I said, I yap a lot. I'm a huge loudmouth. So I would talk to him all the time about this kind of stuff. And I gave him the things that I was finding to support the evidence of God, specifically the Christian God being true. And he eventually followed along, was like, yeah, you're right. No, that does make a lot of sense. So he converted roughly around the same time, but a little bit after me. As far as like the conservative, traditional lifestyle that we actually wanted that even before we became Christians. So right before I found out that I was pregnant, actually like a week before, I had quit my dog grooming job, and I was just quitting at the shop because the shop was extremely toxic. Another video I can make. That place was crazy. But I was going to look for a different job. So I took a week off just to collect myself, look around for jobs, and then I found out I was pregnant. And there's some health risks with grooming, especially with grooming cats while you're pregnant. So I was like, well, I don't really know if I want to do that anymore. I was planning on looking around for other jobs, but me and my husband just kind of had a conversation. At that point, our rent was extremely low. Just the lucky situation that we were in, our rent was only like $450 a month. So it was kind of just a no-brainer for him to continue working and for me to stay home and do the trad wife kind of thing. But then as we started doing more research and becoming more conservative and Christian, it made even more sense. I really like to cook, take care of children. It wasn't really that hard for us to come to that conclusion if that's what we wanted to do. My husband has an amazing work ethic, so he tried to find better jobs and better jobs and better jobs. He went through so many of them before he landed on water restoration. So he's a blue collar boy, and he's so good at it that he's switched companies so many times because companies just keep like poaching him. They keep being like, hey, we'll give you more money and more money because you're really good at what you do. So he's succeeding amazingly in that area. And he's been such a great father and husband to support us all. So that's kind of how that worked. Another question was specifically asking how my husband went from literally practicing like black magic to being a conservative Christian. And I already explained some of that, but what he has told me, because like I said, I was into like the good witch stuff. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. And he was very much into what is known as black magic. Some people think it's fake. It's definitely not fake. You can look up Luciferianism. He was very into Aleister Crowley. I don't remember how to say his last name. My husband had books on it. He was reading up on how to do certain things, on how to do certain spells and stuff like that. Again, I know how crazy this sounds. Bear with me. He went so far that he actually kind of scared himself straight. So that was a big part of him coming to the good side too, was going so far down the bad side that he terrified himself. So maybe someday I'll get him on here to describe kind of the experiences that he had specifically. But that's a lot of what he's told me, is that he just went so far that he scared himself straight. So along with obviously my influence answering questions, showing him what I had learned, he also realized, bad side is real and very bad, so good side probably real too. Another question that I got was, are you certain that Christianity is true? If not, why not? Yes, I am certain that Christianity is true. So throughout my whole conversion story, I've only really been a Christian for about 4 years. Obviously, I had doubts. I think that's true of almost any convert, especially with like that huge of a lifestyle change, you're going to have doubts. At this point in my life, I've done enough research, I've read enough, I've listened to enough debates from very high-level atheists and very high-level Christians. I've looked into specific denominations of Christianity, I've looked into other religions, and the only one that I can see being consistently true internally is Christianity. And then I think that it makes the most sense externally as far as the justification for God actually existing. Now, I personally don't think that I'm at the level where I can be teaching things. So aside from sharing my own experiences, I don't want to get on here and like preach to people. I don't think that that's my place to do. Not just because I'm a woman, but because I don't think that I'm just at that level yet. I'm still a very new Christian. I still have tons to learn. But for me and my personal story, my personal experiences, and myself, I know for a fact that Christianity is true. He also asked, do you believe that if someone has anything less than certainty in Christianity, that it then implies that they're not regenerate / born again / saved / baptized in the Holy Spirit, or whatever your description of a true Christian is? I don't know for sure. I think that it's very normal to have doubts, and I don't know if that's something that would stop you from being regenerate or being saved. I think it's kind of the human condition. Doubts will creep in a lot of the times over anything. And sometimes like the doubtful thoughts aren't even like conscious. You're not even like, oh, I'm going to doubt God. Sometimes it just comes in. And then usually those thoughts will come in, you can rationalize them away and be like, well, that actually doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you go back to whatever you've looked into. I highly recommend people to read a lot. Read your Bible, read about early church history, read theologians and their books for any questions that you have. Talk to your pastor or your priest or whoever your religious authority is. Just be armed with as much knowledge as possible. The same person asked a couple other questions that are a lot lengthier that I might have to do an entire video about. But the gist of one of the other ones is basically, you know, if you meet a Muslim who is very sure that Islam is true, then how are you able to justify the fact that your religion is true and their religion is false? So a good way to show that Islam is true is through debate. So I actually watched debates with Muslims, very highly educated Muslims and highly educated Christians, and there are certain contradictions that cannot be resolved in Islam. And one of the things that they've talked about repeatedly is the Islamic dilemma. A two-pronged argument, and either side that you pick being true makes Islam false. Now, this whole video is not going to be about the Islamic dilemma, so if you want to go look into that, I highly recommend watching God Logic's videos. If the Islamic dilemma is true, which it is, then that would make Islam false by necessity. And that is true for a lot of other religions, even certain sects of Christianity. Now, I've talked on my page about how Mormons are not considered Christians, how Jehovah's Witnesses are not considered Christians, and there are logical arguments for why they're not considered Christians. So religions aren't all the same. They aren't all just worshiping the same God. They aren't all believing in Sky Daddy. There are actual doctrines and actual like internal consistency problems with some religions that philosophically make no sense. Someone asked me regarding my boyfriend at the time dabbling in witchcraft, when you look back in hindsight, did you see spiritual attacks? Obviously. Again, I know I lost some people last time talking about the demonic realm, the spiritual realm. I believe it because I've been through it. I totally remember spiritual attacks. I mean, even things like I used to get sleep paralysis all the time. It was definitely spiritual attacks. And there were times outside of, you know, it wasn't just, oh, I had sleep paralysis, so therefore there were demons around me. But what we were dabbling in was scary and was real. I won't speak on my husband's experiences. He can tell those if he chooses to. But my own experiences, I mean, I would be at home in the house that we were in where most of this was happening. And literally, like, things would happen around me. Number one, I heard things, I saw things, and number two, my mental health at that time was so horrible. I mean, I remember like feeling weird presences around. I remember like literally for no reason, like being so utterly depressed, self-harming, suicidal. And you can blame that on, you know, being a leftist or whatever you want to blame it on. But I know that there was an influence of, you know, the spiritual realm in that too. Like, it's just a no-brainer to me. It had to be. Not saying that other things couldn't have influenced that as well, but I think there were definitely spiritual attacks that were happening to both of us for sure. Whoa, my camera's falling. Some rando told me to remove my tattoos. No? No. I'm not going to remove my tattoos, and I've actually had some other people tell me that too. No. First of all, tattoos are not a sin. Second of all, I got all of my tattoos, not all, but most of them before I was a Christian, when I was in that leftist phase of my life. But I'm not going to remove them. Number one, because I don't have like $1 million, because that stuff is really expensive. Number two, it would take an extremely long amount of time that I just don't have. And number three, I don't want to. I love my tattoos. I love how they look. I love what they represent. Even the ones that, you know, I have ACAB tattooed on my fingers. I see 1312 tattooed on my fingers. I like that I have a physical memory of where I've been, and I don't want to get rid of them. So be mad at me if you want. I'm not getting rid of my tattoos. In fact, I'm going to get more of them. On a lighter note, someone asked me what my nonprofit is so that you guys can donate. That would be amazing. We are just starting out. So we got nonprofit status this past summer, and we've kind of had this idea in the organization loosely like put together for a couple years, but we hadn't actually gotten incorporated and we hadn't gotten our nonprofit status. So now you guys can actually make donations to it. It's called Pro-Life Advocacy Network. I'll put the link. The link is already in my description or in my bio, but I'll put it in the description as well. We would really appreciate your guys' help. We're trying to make it to the March for Life this year, and we want to get, a banner, some signs, and some educational material to hand out. Our biggest mission with this nonprofit is to educate people specifically in online spaces on how to have the debate. So there's a lot of pro-life and pro-choice debates on TikTok specifically, but just all over the internet. And a lot of pro-lifers are not equipped for these debates. A lot of pro-lifers do not know how to engage the other side in an effective manner. They don't know good arguments a lot of the time. They don't know how to analyze people's arguments. They don't know how to spot logical fallacies. They don't know how to keep a conversation linear. They don't know how to control the conversation, as in not let people just go all around and red herrings and drag you all across the place. And a lot of them are misinformed on just specific like abortion stats and abortion facts. So we want to educate not only pro-choicers, but pro-lifers on how to have these debates in ways where you're actually going to make a difference and actually maybe change somebody's mind and do good for the pro-life cause. So that is our mission. We would also love eventually, once we actually get, regular funding, we would love to give tangible help to struggling mothers as well. But for right now, everything is, our own expense. The president, Andy, has been basically running all of this from his own pocket for the past couple years. So we're really trying to get some funding in. So if you would like to, you can donate to us. You can sign up for our emails if you want as well, right on our website. And we would really appreciate it if you would. And I'll see you at the March for Life. If you're there, say hi to me because I love you guys. And I go every year, so. Yeah, I agree, buddy. Some random troll named Based Nuke 7647 is really, really mad at me. And I don't know why he's so mad at me, but he commented like 5 times about how I need to pay people back. I don't know what that means. Am I supposed to just like throw $20 bills at people? What is that gonna do? No, Based Nuke, I will not be paying anybody back. And I hope that makes you very angry. All right, the next question is your husband actually Christian or did he just go along with it? Would you let your kids go to a youth group? Because it seems like the downfall of your faith came from within the church. This is a good question. Yes, my husband is a Christian. He converted shortly after I did. He kind of had to ask me some questions about what I was finding out. I had to, there were some talks that happened for sure. But no, he's 100% a Christian now. He's actually pretty strong in his faith, I would say. Would I let my kids go to youth group? It would depend on the church. The church that I have now, I would probably let them go to a youth group there. The thing with children that you don't want to do is shelter them from everything that you're scared of. So what I don't want my story to do is make parents just like wrap their kids in bubble wrap and lock them in a closet. Your kids still need to experience the world, and sheltering them is going to make it worse when they do leave the house eventually. So I would not recommend doing that. I would recommend letting your kids go and experience the world through youth groups and co-ops and friends' houses. What I would do is, number one, keep the lines of communication open with your child, especially as they get into the teenage years. It's not good to just say things like, well, you can't do that because I said so. You need to, as they grow, start explaining why you don't want them to do things or why you do want them to do things, and lead by example, okay? Like they watch you and they do what you do. So leading by example more than by your words is going to be monumental for them. The other thing, I talk about this sometimes, is to teach them how to think. Don't teach them what to think. Teach them how to think. Teach them to take a piece of text, like an article or a news story, and to think about it, to critically think about it, to maybe notice where there could be some bias peeking through. Teach them how to, click on the links where the news source is getting their sources from, to analyze the data. Teach them how to, instead of just hearing something and being like, you have to follow this because this is what we think is correct, tell them why. Tell them how you logically got to that position. Don't just go around saying, we believe this, so you must believe this. So yeah, teach them how to think, because I think that one of the biggest reasons that I was able to come out of that indoctrination in that terrible time in my life was because my parents did that with me. They, especially my dad, they instilled logic into my brain. And so even though I got swept up emotionally for a few years, I was able to return to that logic pretty easily because it was instilled in me. So obviously, number one, never stop praying for your children, but teach them how to think. Don't just push your views on them and say they're right because I said they're right, because that is how you get leftist crazies once they go to college. It's not necessarily college that is indoctrinating your children. It's the fact that once they get into college and they experience these more liberal leftist views from a lot of people in the colleges, they don't understand how to parse those views out because parents never taught them how. Parents just said, this is what we believe, and so you're going to believe it too. They never taught them how to critically think about things. All right, so that's all the questions that I got. If you have any more, obviously feel free to ask them. I will try to get to them at some point. But right now, I think I'm going to start filming some videos. I'm going to film a video talking about, like, specifically the Christianity aspect of it. And then I'm going to be doing leftist reaction videos because a lot of people wanted those. And I react to leftist videos for free in my bed at night when I'm watching them before I go to bed. So I might as well just film my honest reactions to you guys. And then I can also give some insight on what these people are thinking because I used to be them. And I think a lot of times conservatives don't understand what they're thinking, don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. And even some converts don't want to tell people exactly what they were thinking when they were on the left, if that makes sense. But I don't care though. I will tell you all. If you're